You ready?
Ready whenever you are.
This is a special oral history project interview with Ms. Rachel Legg, who worked here on the Arsenal during World War II, being conducted on the first day of March 2006. Do we have your permission to videotape this?
Yes.
Do you want this videotaped? That's different, okay. Give me, I guess, start out with giving me your full name, I guess maiden name first and then married name.
Rachel Bragg. I was a Bragg. And I married Johnny Lassiter, deceased. And then I married Legg.
Any relation to Bragg's Home Furnishings, Bragg's?
Distant.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But I don't know how close, but it was distant.
Now, your parents, were you named for somebody?
No.
And your parents, were they Huntsville natives?
No, neither. My own mother and father were Tennessee natives. My mother died when I was just a baby. Daddy remarried and married a girl from this area. And she lived on the Arsenal area, but I don't know where.
And what was your mother's name?
Cleveland. She was a Cleveland.
And your daddy?
Bragg.
And what was his first name?
Tom.
What did they do for a living?
My daddy worked in cotton mill, Lincoln cotton mill.
Really?
Mama just kept house. She went to work in the mill. I don't know what year, but she didn't work the full time.
And did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes.
What were-
I had a sister by my mother. She would have been older than me, but she died, I think, at about 3 or 4 months old. And then when Daddy married again, I have 2 brothers and 5 sisters living.
Wow.
Mhm.
And they all live here?
They all live here. We are very close.
How old are they all?
Well, I can't tell you all of them's age because they're getting on up in age. The youngest one, Judy, would be, she's in her 40s. She'd be the youngest one. I'm the oldest of the whole bunch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
And
the rest of them, they're just
yeah, the rest of them, they're just kids.
kids.
And that's the way they treat me.
Like, you're the oldest.
And I'm the boss. But I get all the work. I have all the big dinners and all this kind of stuff. Don't I, Patty?
So you grew up in Lincoln Village?
Grew up
basically?
in Lincoln Village.
Went to school
Went to school,
where?
Lincoln School.
And then, so.
Went to work at Arsenal from school.
What was Huntsville like when you were growing up?
You could walk from one side of Huntsville to the other, which I've done a lot of times. You know where Lincoln is in Huntsville now. Do you remember Merrimack? Okay. My cousin lived in Merrimack. I walked there a lot of times.
You said to me outside that you were 82?
82.
82. So what do you remember about the day that you heard the news about Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor. I remember a friend of mine was sitting on the front porch and we were talking. And he heard it announced on the radio in the house. And he just jumped up out of the swing and he said, "I'll see you later." That's the main thing I remember. And he wasn't a sweetheart or anything like that. He's just a boy that I knew. He just stopped there to talk. But he had to go report in.
And that's the lasting memory you have of that.
Well, that I remember that more than anything because it was so. He knew what it was, and of course we knew too. But this certainly, as soon as he heard it, he just said, "Rachel, I've got to go," and he just went down the steps and took off running.
So you mentioned when you graduated, right after you graduated, you went to work on the Arsenal. What motivated you to come to work on the Arsenal?
Money. I knew you'd ask me that sooner or later. Everybody wanted to work on the Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were scared. Some people wouldn't. In fact, my daddy was terrified. He tried his best to get me not to go back to work and everything else all the time. But we heard bad things
About chemicals.
about the accidents and things like that.
So you mentioned you come in on Bob Wallace, and you told me about the bus picking you up. So
Yeah.
just tell us about that.
Bus picked us up at the end of our street.
An Army bus.
Army bus. And we'd walk down to the end of the street, and sometimes it'd be a pretty good bunch of us. Of course, if we'd get a ride somewhere else, we wouldn't catch that old bus. But in fact, we had a big snow during the time I worked on the Arsenal. And bus couldn't get up that far, so we walked down to. There used to be down close to the Lincoln School, and there's still all those old buildings in there. We walked down there, and snow was deep. Of course, we had big snows then.
Well, I just want to get what year the when.
We were trying to figure that out earlier.
Oh,
What?
yeah, I
Do you
didn't
remember
know.
what year
So-
you came to work?
On the Arsenal?
Mm-hmm.
About, let's see, I was born in 24.
So you were 17 and 41.
Probably about, I was about 19 when I went to work. 20,
So probably about 43 or so.
yeah.
Position. So what did you do? What was your job when you came to work?
First job I had was, they picked up 5 of us at the gate, and in a Jeep, and we went out on this, went out into this area where there was 4 buildings, and they were making grenades. And what were these shells called? They're just about this tall. I don't know. They were some kind of shells. Don't remember. Anyway, we were making all of these, and they were making grenades and these M89 shells. That's what they were called, I think. And I was assigned to the M89 shell assembly line. Every one of them, all these buildings were assembly line buildings. And I was assigned to this assembly line, and I was, my first job, they fill in these things with the powder at the very beginning, and everything that goes in them. I don't know what all goes in them. And as it goes down, each compartment has a certain job to do. I had the department where we had these wet cloth, and we had to wipe them off. They were with glue and stuff on them. We wiped them off, and the next one that went into, they cased them. They put them in cases. It was sent on to another building. And that was my first job. And this is a funny thing. The girl that came to work at the same time I did was named Georgia. And she was put on one side of the line, and I was put on the other side of the line, and we both had to take these wet cloths and wash this thing off fast because they're coming about this far apart. What's it called? Mixing and blending at the very beginning. they would really rush you to death because they were working fast. Each building had a contest, put out more shells, you know. Well, old Georgia was on one side of that line and I was on the other. And those things were coming about this far apart. And we didn't have a whole lot of time to wash that thing off. And I was washing and she was catching it and drying it off because they were packing them up right next to us. They had windows that the shells went through, the assembly line went through. And it got too many. It got too many. I was just going to town and setting it on the floor and grabbing another and setting it on the floor. And the boss of the name, Tracy Hill was his name. He was our boss, and he went up here to see how many they had shipped down the line. He's working hard to be the number one, you know, of the 4 buildings. He said, they've been going you've got at least 5 or 6 trailer loads down there. So he started at the next building. Nobody had them until they got to us. But when they got to Georgia and I, they were all over the floor. They were everywhere. We didn't have time to wipe them off. So we were sitting them in the floor. Old Tracy said, oh, he was so upset. So Georgie was standing in one door and I was standing in the other. We were getting ready to go home because we knew we were going. He went up and picked somebody up, picked people up from the very beginning, brought them down there so he could get all those things cleaned up and packed in the trailers before the next shift come on because they would get the credit for them. And George and I had them all piled up. But this is just an example of what some of us we went through. We didn't know what to do. And he told us, but we didn't understand it. We were scared of them shells.
Was it a close group of people working out there? Was everybody really
Yes,
close?
yes it was. It was a very close, because we were all working in the same thing, and we all knew what it was about. And at that time, most of our boyfriends and everything were over there. And that was bad.
Because you just never knew when you'd get a letter.
Be the last one. So it was bad. But there's a lot of fun winning that too.
You said to Mike that there was your main motivation was money, which I think a lot of people, it was.
Sure it was.
But was there also, from everything we've read, a very large sense of patriotism also?
Oh, Lord, yes. Yes. Yes, very much so.
Tell us about some of your other jobs you mentioned.
On the Arsenal? And I kind of, well, I couldn't drive when I went out there. Never tried it. But I learned to drive in a command car. I had a few little accidents and scrapes and things like that, but you know, you had too many other things on your mind to worry about them little scrapes and things. And yeah, I learned to drive in a command car, but I drove Jeeps and everything else before I left there. But it was...
Well, tell us about, you were mentioning the thing with the lady that you had to push down about the smoke pipes.
Oh, yeah, that was my lieutenant. I went from job to job. I didn't stay on this assembly line very long. And then they transferred me out to, I went to work for Captain Levy up at the chemical lab. It was in the same area. And I worked for the captain, I don't know how long. And it was during the time that I worked with Captain Levy that I was driving the command car, because they were short some girls for drivers, carrying them out to be tested and things, and I just happened to be one of the replacements. And driving that old command car was, gee whiz, they were, you know, huge things. I weighed anywhere from 75, 80, somewhere along there. And It's a big car for me. So I sit on the edge with my toes way out like this and things like that. But anyway, we had a load of M4 smoke pots, and those things you have to understand how the basic of the testing and everything. But it would be just a little pool of water that was running from about here over to the bookcase there, and that would be the water. But from there to there is just water, but you got paths. You can go across on the other side of that water. And if the smoke got, when you put the pots in there, if the wind took the smoke in your direction, you get on the other side as fast as you can. So I always picked a place that was close to one of those paths so that I could get to the other side. And I've crossed it a few times. But it didn't happen very often, the wind, take us over, because we watched it. We would see which directions the wind is blowing this day, or something like that. My lieutenant went with us one time to check us, to see how we were testing. And if we were getting the right time on these pots. You have a certain time for each pot to smoke. And the wind changed. And we all knew to hit the dirt when the wind changed. If we couldn't get away from there, you hit the dirt, because the smoke's not going to get you if you don't got your face in the dirt. But she didn't. It excited her. And I hit her and knocked her down. I knew I was going to get fired. But we were told to do this. And I did it. But she thanked me.
You mentioned you worked about the German prisoners. You worked at the post hospital for a while.
Yeah, but I didn't work with any prisoners.
But you met some.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, the first prisoners that came in there worked on the side of the roads and things like that. And, of course, they was not allowed to wave at us or holler at us or anything, and we wasn't allowed to do that. But we did. I mean, they would wave at us and we'd wave at them. They wasn't here because they wanted to be. And we never saw anything bad out of them. They all worked, and they're hard workers.
Weren't you surprised, though, that there wasn't more animosity towards them, considering that, or did, once they were here, they were just treated like, well, they were in a war situation that they didn't want to get into, or what was the attitude?
Nobody mistreated the German prisoners. Nobody did. At least I never heard of it. They were friendly, and we were friendly with them. They were at a distance. We didn't talk to them. We were not supposed to. But we would wave at them, like that. And of course, at that time now, I was testing, and I was in vehicles, so we didn't talk at all. We just waved. But I'm sure there was a lot of hard feelings, but I never did know of any. Most of them were over here because they had to be, just like our boys were over there. And that's the way we thought about it. That's the way we thought about it.
It's interesting only because after World War II, when the Von Braun team comes here to Huntsville, we heard stories from the Germans. There were some returning veterans who opened up or worked at gas stations, and there was one gas station downtown that said, we don't serve gasoline to Krauts or something like that. So.
Well, of course, they didn't have gasoline back then. The Germans wouldn't have gotten any gas.
Right, yeah. No, but I'm saying this is like in the 50s.
Yeah, well, now that could be hard feelings, at that time. But during the actual fighting, when they were over here and everything, I never heard of one being mistreated. Never did. Of course, there's a lot you don't hear. But They were nice. They'd wave at us and we'd wave at them. Never talked to one. Never spoke to one. But a lot of the people did.
Now, one of them baked your cake.
Oh yeah. I was working I was working out on the Arsenal then. I mean, in the hospital then. He brought me a cake in. He had one of the boys to bring the cake to me. One of the soldiers. While I was working at the Army hospital, and he told Mike to bring me that cake, and he did. And I was scared to eat it, so I took it back in the kitchen. Well, listen, you're going to be friendly with them. Those boys were over here. They were fighting a war just like our boys was. And we were taught this too. We were told, our boys are over there. Let's hope and pray to God that somebody is being nice to them. And I had 2 or 3 boyfriends over there.
How
fighting.
many?
Well, some of my friends
Oh, okay.
over there were fighting. And anyway, what was I telling you?
We were talking about that cake and you.
Oh, I took it in the kitchen and just left it sitting there in the kitchen. And Lieutenant Demuth came out, my lieutenant, and she came out and she said, "Whose cake is that?" I said, "It's mine." She said, "You haven't cut it yet?" I said, "No. I wasn't going to cut that cake. Something blow up or poison me or something, you know." And he told Mike could speak German. He told Mike that his mother made that cake and sent it to him.
No.
Well, she did.
Holy mackerel.
And they got gifts, they got packages all the time from their hometowns, you know. And Lieutenant Demuth said, "I'm going to cut the cake." I said, "You go to it. I don't want any of it." But I did. I ate some of it. It was the great cake. It's something like a fruit cake.
And you did not die from it?
No. Mm-mm.
Where do you want to go, Mike?
Military.
Did you work with, you mentioned 2 examples, I guess, military people that you work with. There weren't a lot of military, but you did work with some military people.
Mm-hmm. They were usually, it was captains and lieutenants and,
Did you know
in fact,
anything
I
about-
dated one of the lieutenants.
You dated one?
Yeah.
You had boyfriends overseas and you were dating a lieutenant here?
Mm-hmm. No, he wasn't a German.
Right. Did you know anything about their backgrounds?
No.
They didn't talk about where
No.
Were they like Yankees and stuff?
No, not really.
You mentioned the wax. How many, were there a lot of wax?
Wax.
The women's.
Women, yeah, we had quite a few. Lieutenant Demuth and, well, I don't know. We had quite a few wax out there. Demuth was my wax at the hospital.
What about, were there many, the men that worked out there, were they mostly older or?
No, there was middle-aged men. I don't remember ever seeing a young fella out there. Now, I'm not going to say there wasn't. I'm sure there was some out there that probably couldn't get in the Army or something like that, but I don't know of any.
So they were 4F for the Army, but they...
Either, well, it may not have been 4F. There could have been medical problems or something like that. But I never did see a whole lot of young fellas out there at all. Unless they were military people,
Right.
you know.
Were there many women supervisors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what was Huntsville like when you came to work on the Arsenal? I mean, you mentioned very briefly how small it was, but what was your impression of the Arsenal and all?
Most of us were scared of it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What did they tell you, and we've talked to people who worked on the lines here before, did they tell you things like, you know, don't talk about this or don't talk about how much munitions you guys were producing, or did they, were there restrictions on what you could or could not?
Yeah,
talk
we
about?
didn't. We wasn't supposed to go out and tell people what we were doing.
Period.
Period. And we, of course, then we didn't. My daddy was scared to death because he didn't know what I was doing out there, and I couldn't tell him
At all.
at all.
The only thing people in town saw were
Was what
like
they
the purple people, sometimes the
Yeah,
colored people.
I never saw any purple ones out
Well,
there, but
the
I did.
yellow or what was
Yellow,
it?
yellow, and
Red.
red, and some of them had tan. Real, it wasn't a suntan; it was a tan.
It was that dark
Yeah.
brown.
Yeah, I never had any of that on me.
That was good.
But my daddy would have tied me down if I had, I imagine, because he was scared to death for me to go to work anytime.
But really, so everybody who worked out here was told that when you leave, you don't talk about it.
Mm-mm, you don't talk about it. And we didn't because we were scared to. Actually, to just be frank with you, we were all scared most of the time anyway, because we knew what we were working with and from, you know. We were making shells and all that kind of stuff. Grenades. And that's when they were making the grenades in different colored powders. You know, the grenades are just about this big around and about that tall. You throw them. And that's what we were working in a lot. I never did get any of that on me because, as I said, I wasn't. You had to be testing or working in the powder, and I never did either one. I did some testing, but they were already in there. We used to call them cocoons.
Did you recall any of the names of the commanders who were here, the big bosses, the military guys? Did you remember any of their names?
Captain Levy goes with me. I mean, he is so outstanding with me.
But nobody on the colonel level or the general level, like Mike mentioned, General Ditto.
No, we knew them when we saw them, and we would speak to them and things like that. But no, we never come in contact directly with them.
Were I bet it was hot in those buildings in the summertime, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. But most of those buildings where you had so many people, it had each side of the building itself was just big doors. So it was just almost out in the open.
But it was still hot, right?
Mm-hmm. We had no air conditioning in none of those
And in
buildings.
the wintertime, it got cold.
But then you closed your doors.
Well, that would solve that.
Y'all wore coveralls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it, did they?
That's when I was testing.
And they, Army furnished those, you had to buy them or what?
No, it was Army.
Well, what was, or do you remember, was there much interaction between, the local community and the Army folks here?
Mm-mm.
No?
Mm-mm. We were all, everybody was friendly with each other. You know, there was no hard feelings or anything like that. My lieutenant, one of my lieutenants, used to come out to my house and sit out on the front porch and drink beer with my dad. He did that quite often.
Yeah. Were there any kind of community events that the Army folks would come to?
All of them. Just about all of them. Mm-hmm.
Greatest challenge?
Yeah.
You had mentioned that the biggest thing, I guess, if you had to think of the greatest challenge you had working out here was the fact that you were scared, number one.
When I first went out there, but you get to where you just relaxed and.
But they were pretty tough about safety stuff.
Oh yes, very
Safety
very
was
much so.
always-
But you didn't know that. And I'll tell you one reason why. Or did I tell you about the boy that brought us in when I first hired in?
You mentioned it on the way in, but not on the tape.
There was 5 of us girls coming in at the same time, checking in to work. None of us had ever been on the Arsenal. Didn't know a thing in the world about it except people got blowed up out there. And they come in with different colors. You know, that's about it. We were driving along the path, and if you even had such a place nowadays, I could have shown it to you, but anyway, we're driving along the road, and there was something at a distance over there burning. And we asked him, "What's that burning over?" He said, "Oh, that was a building that blowed up here quite a few months ago, and it's still burning. It'll burn from now on." Those soldiers, you know, knew that we were just dumb as we could be, and it scared the daylights out of us. But
What were some of the other challenges that you faced working out here, though? What were some of the other things that were really made it interesting about working out here?
I guess really and truly it's just, I don't know. It was everything I did out there was interesting, and I enjoyed working out there, but I didn't like what I was doing, why I was doing it. And I think that's the way everybody out there felt. I mean, if we'd get one of the people that was working in close to us or something like that, get a bad message, it tore everybody up. We all grieved. And it was very often. It was often.
Where somebody would get a message that their husband or boyfriend was killed or injured.
Right. And
They all lived with that every single minute during the war, didn't they? While the
Oh,
boys were
everybody
overseas?
did. Everybody did. Because everybody knew somebody or had a relative.
Who was serving?
Hmm. The boy across the street from me was killed. Lived right across the street from Mom and Dad. He was killed. And it was, you know, Huntsville was a small town. So news traveled.
The Arsenal was working 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
So you had to work different shifts?
Shifts. 2 on and 2 off. But we worked, I can't remember exactly. We had a day shift, afternoon shift, and an early shift. We had 3 shifts. And every 2 weeks we changed. We didn't have air conditioning at my house, and during the daytime it would be so hot. I'd come in from work and eat me a bite and
Try to get some sleep.
under the bed.
Literally, physically under the bed.
Physically. I'd eat my breakfast and put on my pajamas and get me a pillow, and I'd go into my bedroom and I'd put that pillow up under the bed and I'd crawl up under the bed. It's the coolest place in the house. That's true. We didn't have air conditioning then.
So,
Remember, I'm 82.
so during those war years, what did you guys do for fun?
Oh, yeah?
Both at work, and maybe, you know, did you pal around with a lot of the people from work?
Not a lot of them, except most of the girls that I knew were working on the Arsenal. My age group.
So what'd you do for fun?
We had a lot of honky tonks, and I know, Patty.
What?
If we didn't have a whole lot of work to do in the midnight shift, sometimes we wore coveralls. When you entered that place out there, if this is in the chemical area now, you entered that place out there, you go to the change house and put on your pants, what do you call them? We called them something. Anyway, we'd put on our work clothes and we'd go out on the line. Well, if we didn't have anything to do, and sometime we'd hang around 2 or 3 hours waiting on some job, finally the lieutenant would say, "We're not going to get anything tonight, you might as well sleep a while." Well, if you was in the working area, you had on your coveralls, green coveralls, Army. And if you was leaving your area, you had to go to the change house and change. But we have been known to go out and dance a while. We would pull our coveralls down to our waist and go dance.
Well, who was there to dance with?
Each other. And they still, a lot of the girls still do that. You see girls and, no, you don't see boys. But a lot of times you see girls out on the dance floor now. Back then we didn't have any boys to dance with. Unless it's some old fella that wanted to be young. And not many of the girls that I knew would even dance with them.
Yeah.
But we would always get back in time before daylight.
Excuse me. What do you remember about VE and VJ Day? What was the mood like? What was the reaction of everybody? Did everybody think, wow, that's great, the war's over, boys are coming home and we're out of a job? I mean, what did you all think about
Well, nobody thought about a job.
Really?
Not that I know of. When war started, the first thing that we heard, I told you about the boy sitting there in the front porch and he jumped up and run. And from that on, from there on, the boys were just leaving. They're just going. When the war was over, I was married then. I had married. And we got in my boy that I was really so tied up with, we didn't make it through the full time because he was going different places and getting new girlfriends and things like that. So I was doing the same. We parted, but anyway, I was married when war was over and married to my deceased husband. And everybody in Huntsville was just, it was just a madhouse. We went over into, he was, we were with a bunch of young people, and we all got in a truck, and somebody told us that this man in Athens had a carload of hay or something over there. And so we took off to Athens to get into the hay. And we did. Emptied that hay. Everybody was just celebrating, just doing everything.
Was there a bigger celebration for VE Day or VJ Day when it was finally over?
Oh, there wasn't a celebration when war was declared, but there was when it was over. There wasn't any celebration then. It was just sorrow and weeping, and it was a sad day when we heard that.
Well, during your career on the Arsenal, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, I had a hand in the war being over.
Did you all think that you contributed just as much as anybody else did for
Not
the
as
war?
much as our boys did.
I understand
but
that,
yes.
But I'm saying you felt like that you were part of the greater...
They told us that. We had meetings, on the Arsenal, and certain groups would get together, and maybe captains, and come in and talk to us and everything. And we felt like we had a share in that. And listen, we were putting M4 smoke pots on a train one time, and we were writing their names on those M4 smoke pots. Yes, we did. I got letters from all over the world. And all the girls did.
That's funny.
Yeah. We never did. And I only met one guy that came in from service that looked me up.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And he did come in and look me up.
But you were married when he finally came home.
No, no, I was still single.
Okay.
And he was from Heckme, New York. I never heard that place. I don't know where there is such a place now or not. And I never heard of it until then or since. But he was from Heckme, New York. He was a skinny little fellow.
A Yankee.
Yeah,
And he came to see you?
yeah. He was with a convoy that was coming through.
No.
And they stopped under some shade trees not too far from our house. And this happened quite often. They'd be coming through, and the boys all be in the trucks, and everything. And there was a place up from where we lived. It was just nothing but trees up in there. It was real cool up there. They would pull those trucks in there, and those boys get off, and they'd say, "Okay, boys, we're leaving out such and such a time." And the boys would just go in all directions. And we have fed them at our house.
So the war's over. You have VE and VJ Day. So did you quit your job voluntarily, or did they say, okay, we're starting to lay off people?
I quit before.
Did you?
Yeah. Because I
Right.
got married.
Okay, so right. What was life like in the area once the arsenal operations started shutting down?
Well, Patty can almost help me in on that deal because they moved to Huntsville not long after that, didn't you?
It was 59 when we moved here.
Yeah.
So I'm saying right after World War II, what were things like in Huntsville as the arsenals were shutting down?
People were leaving and hunting jobs, and because you said a lot of people moved into here during the war,
Okay.
and because we were an arsenal, and they were hiring everybody they could find.
So people moving into the area just because of
Mhm.
the job. But
Mhm.
once the war ended,
They started going, and jobs were not available, not as many.
So tell us briefly about yourself after you quit work on the Arsenal. Because Rick said you worked with Milton Cummings.
Oh yeah, I worked. Well, I didn't work with Milton Cummings. Mr. Cummings owned the company, but he was a friend too. He was a friend, and his daughters were good friends of mine, and two of them, well, all of them really. Mr. Cummings was just a daddy to all of us. He was one of the greatest men that ever lived, and everybody here knew him. I mean, we knew him.
Did a lot for this community.
Yeah. He's the one that gave me my job.
What was that job doing?
What was I doing right at first? Keeping time on an assembly line. I was keeping time. And then I went up, worked a little while up in purchasing. And then I went to testing it, what was those things? I don't know, some kind of plates. Tested them, and then I went to work the switchboard. I worked on it for years.
This is at Brown Engineering?
Mm-hmm. It was a good place to work.
You remember Joe Moakwood?
Oh, sure. Mr. Moakwood, Vice President. Yeah, he's still living. I hadn't seen him in a good while now. We usually, when we meet each other, we sit down and talk. You know, because we knew everybody at Brown Engineering. I was in a position that I knew just about everybody in the company. And we knew everybody that come and went. And Mr. Cummings, as I said, just a friend. He used to bring me lunches when I'd be real busy and wouldn't have time to eat. He'd go home for lunch, and he'd bring me a plate. He was a good man. He was on the company, and everybody knew who he was. But he was everybody's friends. Janitors, just as friendly with them as he was anybody else. You don't see too many men like that.
And he used to love to play tennis, we were told, and golf.
My son caddied for him when he was young. You know, he took care of all of his golf courts. Ricky took care of all those golf courts. I guess he's told you about it too, man. Yeah, he took care of all of Mr. Cummings' golf carts.
And you remember when he passed away?
Oh, yes.
Sad time in the community, wasn't it? It was a sad time.
It's a sad time for everybody that knew him. Yes.
There's always been, since the World War II days to now, a very, very unique relationship between Huntsville and the Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about how this community is in terms of a military installation with a city?
Well, nowadays, everybody loves the Arsenal because that is their life right now, you know. That's where most everybody works. And when the Arsenal first started moving in, there was a lot of resentment because, well, it's changed so much. We loved our little town. Of course, we love our town now. But it was changing then, so it made a difference.
So initially, when they announced that they were going to build the installation, do you think there was some resentment?
I don't know where there was any resentment or not. A lot of people were happy because it was going to give them more jobs. But I don't really think that they resented it. I don't know.
Well, take you back to a couple of Army people. And do you remember anything about Werner von Braun when he came to town?
Yeah, I remember when he came to town. I never did know him, but my husband talked to him some. Johnny. My husband run theater. My first husband run the theater downtown.
Which one?
Lyric. Hmm. And now he didn't own it now. He worked down there. But he come in contact with a lot of people down there that I didn't know. I never did meet von Braun. I knew where he lived, and that's about it.
Well, what do you think about, we were touched on this briefly, the future of this area here? Because you've been around 82, but you look 62. And you know, you've seen this town grow a lot.
I don't see how it can grow very much more. I really don't. And you know, really and truly, when you, there's no need in me saying anything other than what I'm going to say. I was born and raised in this town. And there's a little, back in the back somewhere, there's a little resentment that this is not my home anymore. You know, it's changed. It's just not my home. Like, I don't resent it because of the people or the jobs, because I'm glad they got the jobs. I used to know just about everybody in this town. Now I don't know anybody. And that's you know, that kind of gets you. And it would you if you went back to your hometown and it had changed like mine has. I don't know where you're from, but... Are you from Huntsville?
Rogersville.
Rogersville. Well, you're close.
Yeah. What
And a lot of your people in Rogersville work right here.
Yeah. I'm not gonna ask why you decided to remain here.
No.
That's superfluous redundancy.
So is there anything else you can think of? We talked about a lot.
We want all the names of all those boyfriends you had, and we want it now.
Yeah.
Let's start going down this list. We're gonna start looking them up.
Well, some of them are not even here anymore, and
No.
some of them are dead, and I don't even know where some of them are. So I couldn't help you.
I guess it's very, very hard, or it would almost be impossible to really describe what it was like to work out here during World War II unless you were there, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You had to be here. You had to be
That must have
here.
been something. I mean, that must have been just
But you know, we were a close bunch of people out here because we all worked on the arsenal, and we all had the same fear, and there was a fear all the time, and your daddy worked out there too, and I'm sure he felt that way too at times. You get into certain areas that are not real safe, and but everybody was kind of close. Everybody knew what we was doing, and we knew why. So you stuck with it. I don't know what y'all were after, what kind of information.
It was great.
I don't know, the names of those boyfriends would have been nice, but.
Did any of your other family members work out here?
Your brothers and sisters all would have been too young.
Yeah, they're too young. No.
How old was your daddy when he passed?
Daddy was, I think about 82. Can you remember, Patty?
I think he was 88.
Was he 88?
Really?
He was in his 80s. We live a long time because we love where we live.
He worried to death about you. when
Oh,
you
yes,
worked.
all the time. I brought in a ball one time a lot of times we'd have times we wasn't doing nothing, or if the people didn't have much to do on the line and things like that. Get out and throw ball and things close to the building so you could be called, you know. I brought in one of these old balls, about this big around, and from the arsenal. And everybody had written on it, you know, and somebody had signed on it and everything. You couldn't read any of them. And Daddy wanted to know where I got that ball. And I said, I got down at the arsenal. You get that thing out of this house.
Why? He was afraid?
Yeah, he was afraid. But most people were. Didn't know that didn't know and never had been out there. They were, wasn't it, Patty? You were afraid because you didn't know what was all out there. Nobody knew what it was. The arsenal was a closed-mouth job.
When you said you came to work on a bus, did they check everybody's badge before the bus went through the gate, or what? How did that work?
Before you got on the bus.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh. You wasn't on the reservations when you got on that bus. You had to go through the gates. Mm-hmm. And they checked your badge as you got on the bus. You were checked real close. You were watched real close.
So when you left the arsenal, did you get a debriefing? Did they tell you don't tell any secrets and all that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that went with everybody. Yeah, well, you told when you leave here, you forget everything out here.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Who was it that we talked to who worked out here?
We talked to this one lady, and we had to swear on a stack of Bibles that she wouldn't be arrested.
Yeah. She still thought it was classified after 60. Well, they did the same thing during Vietnam. Because it was a Cold War, but what they would do is literally put the fear of God into these people, and they literally were afraid to mention anything, absolutely anything. So.
Well, I haven't given away any secrets.
No.
Well, we're gonna let our security people look at this. And
Okay.
then if-
Only the
Well,
dancing
you will.
with the coveralls and.
What?
You wouldn't give us the boyfriend.
Man, no, yeah, you didn't give up the names of the boyfriends. Did your name ever show up the Post had a couple different newspapers?
Mhm.
Yeah,
What-
it was, she's in there.
She is?
There is one, now, it was in one of the newspapers. I have no idea how long that's been or anything
Did it
else.
have a picture of you in there?
Somewhere.
Mitch, tell us
Mhm.
about the puppy dog you got.
Oh, there was at the laundry, where they laundried all the uniforms, where you got so many more minutes.
No, we have another hour to go.
Oh, well, I don't have another hour worth of tales. But we had this,
An hour, the next hour will cover the time for all his boyfriend names, but go ahead.
the military had a laundry where the boys could do their own laundering. And Captain Levin was over that whole section, I guess. Anyway, this dog wandered up there, and they made a home for it, made a bed, and it had some puppies shortly after that. Captain Levy was, of course, took an interest in those little puppies, you know, and everybody did. And of course, me being a tester, I would go by and see them, you know, every so often. They gave me one of those puppies. The boys did. They gave them to different people, you know. And I got one, and my picture was in the paper with my puppy.
What a hoot.
Do you remember what you named it?
Washwoman.
No.
I hadn't even thought about that in years. Washwoman, that
Probably
was her
hadn't
name.
thought about it in about 50 years, have you?
Huh?
Probably hadn't thought about that in about 50 years.
Yeah, that's the truth. Washwoman. I really hadn't thought about that.
That's funny.
It just popped up.
That's funny.
Washwoman was her name, and that's what the boys started calling her. Because she was born in the laundry. I mean, her puppies were. The puppy that I got was born there.
Real quick, in the few minutes we got left, we knew that there weren't a lot, but there were some black workers here, black female workers
Yeah,
here.
there was.
Did they work? That they had segregated. Now, did they work with you all, or were they segregated out, or how did that all work? Do you remember?
I never did work with any, but I have seen them working with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was some drivers. I know there was some drivers. Trying to think. There was one black nurse that worked in the hospital area. Trying to think. There wasn't too many. I know that. But there was some on the Arsenal. And you know, nobody would have mistreated them had they been. Nobody would have. 'Cause, I don't know, you from Rogersville, and you know you never did treat your black people over there, mistreat them.
No.
You didn't mistreat them.
No.
But now, people think that live up north and everything, that we mistreated
No.
black people. We did not.
No, it's just that the word a lot, and they still had separate, there was back in 43, actually 44, there was an active effort on the part of the Arsenal during World War II to recruit black women. And what they did was they went to Tuskegee Institute, and their bar of what they wanted in terms of the level of education were, college graduates. They thought that if you're a black woman, a college graduate, you were equal to a high school graduate. I mean, literally. And so there were women, because there was so much work going on. You were talking about double shifts, 2 on, 2 off.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just backbreaking work. It was for a lot of people.
Mhm.
But they were trying to they couldn't get enough people.
Mhm.
Because you have to think,
Huntsville's a small town.
well, number one. Number two, in 1942, we were just barely 1 year into the war. The Europeans had been into the war about 3 years. But we had no idea how long this was going to last. Nobody had any idea.
No.
Yeah, everybody looks at everything with,
And people were coming in from out of town to work here, and there wasn't enough housing for them. So they were living with other people, and I had this one little girl that came from Cullman to Huntsville. My daddy would have never let me leave town to go to get me a job, but a lot of them did. And she got her a one-room apartment down on Holmes Avenue. Those houses have been torn down. They were beautiful homes. And she took me one time. She was a good friend of, she just joined in my group of girls that we run around with. And Mary and I, this one friend, were real close. Wilma joined in with us. So she wanted us to come spend the night with us one time. And Mary said, Rachel, you go first, and I'll go. So I did. But I walked into something that I wasn't used to. They own Cullman. See, they're rich people. She took me in there just like I was one of her. You know, I was her buddy, and I was in Huntsville. And you know, that's the kind of place.
Yeah.
That's the kind of place Huntsville was.
Interesting.
I mean, you know, it didn't matter.
Was there a time?
Well, okay, that's fine, but I have a question on the answer that's not related to that.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, don't have to film it, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Are there any people still around that you remember that you worked with?
On the Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this friend of mine that's very close, she and I were close, and she's the Mary that I just said, told you go to now and I'll go next. She lives out in California now, but Stan Mary's having a real rough time, but she's still alive.
Any that live in this area?
I'm trying to think.
Any of your school friends that y'all still meet once a month, are there any of those ladies that worked with you out there?
There may be.
Well, when you get together with them next time,
I'll ask them.
yeah. Because, you know, we'd like to get the stories of,
You'd like to get somebody else's stories.
yeah, several, as many as we can get.
But there are not as many as there used to be. Right?
No.